Hey guys, it's Lex here at LexReads. She's alive! Hi! It's so nice to see you. I know it's been a little while. But today, I'm excited to share with you my favorite 10 books that I read in 2020. Without further ado, I've been talking too much. I've forgotten how to do this because it's been 8 years. The 10 best books I read this year. Let's just start off. I'm going backwards, so I'm starting with 10, finishing with 1. In 10th place, we have Girl Serpent Thorne by Melissa. I don't know how to say her last name. Bashardoust? Maybe? I should have looked that up. I know I say that every time I try to say any author's name ever. This book really surprised me a lot. I don't remember if I read this for a video or not. If I did, I will link it down below. This book was great. This book was so much fun. So this is a fairy tale of sorts. We follow a princess, Soraya, who she has been cursed with poison touch her whole life. So anytime she touches someone with her bare hands, it kills them, it poisons them. And so she's basically been locked up in the castle, avoiding people her entire life. And her brother is getting married. And she sees this man who seems to understand her better than everyone else does. And so the reason I got this book, the reason I picked this as my add-on for my book of the month was because I had seen it on TikTok a lot, and everyone was like, we love a good sapphic fairy tale, and I was like, sapphic fairy tale, sign me up. And I bought it without reading the description, and then I read it and was so confused. It is sapphic, in case you're wondering. 5 out of 5 stars. This book, the writing is gorgeous. It has one of my favorite first lines of all time, which is, stories always begin the same way. There was and there was not. I really like that. And I also really like, that's the first line of the prologue, and I love the first line of chapter 1, which is, from the roof of Gulbahar, Soraya could almost believe that she existed. I think that's a great first line. We all know how I feel about first lines. They're very important to me. So, Girl Serpent Thorne in number 10. Cheers to that. Thumbs up. Highly recommend if you haven't read it. The thing that did surprise me about this list is that number 9 and number 8 are both thrillers, which I wasn't really expecting. But number 9 is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I think I read this for a video. Once again, if I did, I'll go down, link it down below. I think I vlogged it, but I might be wrong. But I definitely, these little tabbies are my guesses on who did it. And as we've been known, I've been looking for my perfect murder mystery because I love a good whodunit. And at this point in my life, this is the closest we've ever gotten to a perfect whodunit. I absolutely loved it. My favorite thing about this book is that you don't know who dies until you know who the killer is, which made it a really interesting whodunit experience because I usually guess right. I'm rarely really shocked by whodunits, but because I didn't know who was murdered, all these tabs I marked, I was like, if Will, then Olivia. Or but all of the tabs are if it's Johnny, then so-and-so did it. If it's Olivia, then so-and-so did it. But it made for a really fun ride. And also, I like that we have flashes of the actual event interspersed with I think we start 2 days before or 1 day before or something. Anyway, super good. Highly recommend. I bought The Hunting Party, which was came out before this one. Came out last year. And the setup is kind of the same. So we'll see if I like it as much. I haven't read it yet, but we'll see if I like it as much the whole, like, you don't know who dies, but you know that it's like that thing. She did it in the other one too, but I read this one first, so we'll see if I like it as much. Number 8. Number 8 is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager, who is, after this year, my favorite thriller writer of all time. I say that confidently. Riley Sager is my favorite thriller author of all time. I loved each and every one of his books. This has it so you can see where it's missing in the shelf. I loved this. This was my favorite of the 4. It was the second one I read. I just liked the setup of this one, I think, a little bit more. I think that's what did it for me. And I also really enjoyed following the main character. She was a lot of fun to follow. Because Emma, super unreliable narrator. I love a good unreliable narrator. But she was just a joy to read about. Her trying to uncover the mystery of what had happened when she was a camper I don't know what, probably like 13 years before she gets invited to go back and teach art at the summer camp. So she goes back with the sole purpose of finding out what happened to her cabin mates all those years before. And when I tell you that this was a treat, I mean it. I also kind of think I vlogged this, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll link it down below. Riley Sager's writing is phenomenal. 7. We're up to 7. My 7th favorite book that I read this year, and this, I must confess, is kind of a lie, but my 7th favorite book that I read this year is The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. And the reason I said this is kind of a lie is because technically I'm telling you like my top 14 or 15, because there were quite a few books on this list where I had like the first and second book in a series, or like the second and third book in a series, but I didn't want my entire top 10 to be like the same, like 3 series, just all of the books of them. So instead I just did whichever was the highest ranking of the series. So technically my 8th favorite book, or I don't know if it was 8th, but the book that was below this was The Raven Boys, and then there was this one. I loved The Dream Thieves, and I do have a vlog for that, which will be linked down below. This vlog was one of my favorite videos I've ever filmed. I had a blast. This book, so good, so good. The prose is stunning. I've said so much about it in that vlog that I feel weird saying literally anything about it. I love the prologue, and I love the epilogue, and I love everything about this, and I still haven't read the rest of the series, but we're getting there, I promise. The vlogs will happen someday. Hopefully someday soon. I'm in a reading slump right now. We don't need to talk about it. This book, though, phenomenal. Ronan's my favorite in the series, so no surprise that Ronan's book is my fave. The Raven Boys, also phenomenal. That was one below on my list, technically. Also fell in love with that one. The Raven Boys was one of my most surprising reads of the year because I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. My 6th favorite book, These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling. This was one of the first books I read in 2020. I think this was like the 4th book I read. And it was my favorite book of the year for a hot minute until I think the middle or the end of March, when I read a couple books that trumped it. But this book, so good. I love witchy murder mysteries. The sequel was also great. It was, I think, like 17 or 18 on my list. But this one was so sweet. This one's also sapphic. We follow Hannah. She's an elemental witch trying to figure out if there is a blood witch in... Where does she live? Is it Salem? Yeah. In Salem, Massachusetts. But a blood witch wants her dead, and she's trying to figure out who's causing havoc, wreaking havoc in the town. It's so good. It's so much fun. This one was just fun. That's like really, like this was a really self-indulgent read for me. It ticks so many of the boxes for my like favorite things in reading in books that like really and honestly, it just, oh, so good. 5 is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. You guys know You know how much I fell in love with this book. I fell in love with this book. This book is phenomenal. I didn't realize how much I liked body horror until I read Wilder Girls. It's amazing. Oh, and I love the moral ambiguity of all of the main characters. I love that it's sapphic, but in a really, really subtle way. It's very believable, very relatable, but also intense in a way that I love from my horrors. And this is technically horror, I think. Horror and mystery. So this book, in case you didn't know, is we follow 3 students at Racksters, which is a girls' school on this island that has been quarantined. They're all trapped there. They're not allowed to leave because there's this weird sickness called the tox that causes their bodies to do these really creepy things. So, like, you might get weird scales on your back, or your hand might be scaly, or your eye might swell shut and do something strange, or you might get fangs. I don't know. They all have, like, weird body things going on because of this sickness. And we follow them trying to figure out what's going on. And then one of them, the 3 girls that we follow, goes missing. And we get to go along on the adventure of trying to find out where she is, what happens to her, and what's happening just on the island in general. I devoured this, and it's glorious. It's so good. Oh, it's so good. It's delicious. Next up, we have number 4. We have Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This book destroyed me in the most glorious way. And I don't know if I ever filmed the wrap-up the month that I read this. Did I? I'll have to check. This is one of the things I read the most recently before my second reading slump of the year hit. I've only read like 8 books since June. Like, I read more books every month in the first half of the year than I did the entirety of the second half of the year. Cemetery Boys is the most glorious thing I've ever read, and this is another, it was very, like, self-indulgent for me for a lot of reasons. We follow Yadriel, who, he's a brujo, in Los Angeles, I believe, and trying to prove something to himself and his family, he summons a ghost, and this ghost is a boy that he goes to school with, and he has to figure out how to free his soul, and it's queer. We got that male-male romance going on. We got those men-loving men. And Yadriel is also trans, which we love to see. I'm non-binary. I don't know if I've ever said that here. I'm non-binary. So anytime I get to read trans rep, I think it's really exciting. And trans, queer, he's Latino. There's witchiness. We got that brujo magic going on. All of it just, once again, much like These Witches Don't Burn, it just found that sweet spot of like so many things that I'm in love with coming together in this culmination of like glorious, delicious, oh, it's stunning. Also, it has the prettiest naked cover I've ever seen. My 3rd favorite book of the year. Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. They are an amazing author. So good. So good. I fell in love with Alex and Henry and their story. I wasn't expecting to like this nearly as much as I did. But it hit, and it hit well, and it hit hard. And there's some of the lines in here are my favorite of all time. This might be my favorite This is my favorite romance that I've ever read in my whole life. And I don't read a lot of romance, as you've seen, like strict romance, like where that's the primary plot of the story. I love romance with my fantasy, or with my, spec fiction, or with my whatever. But I don't read just straight romance very often, and this, oh, it's glorious. I read it twice this year. And, oh, it's so good. I can't wait for Casey's next book, because this is amazing. This is one of my new comfort reads. That's why I read it a second time. I read it pretty close. I started it again the second time. The night of the first debate. Moving on, number 2 is The King's Men by Nora Sakavic. But, full disclosure, The Raven King was also on my top 10. And The Foxhole Court was just under the cutoff for 10. So, really subjectively, this should probably be my favorite book of the year because this, I would argue, is my favorite book that I read this year. So it should probably be my number 1, but I have a whole video talking about this series, which I'll link down below. I have enough hang-ups about it to not consider it my number 1, but subjectively it's my favorite book that I read this year. I'm in love with it. Full disclosure, so much is wrong with me. This series is my new, comfort series, ultimate comfort series. These characters, Andrew Minyard is my comfort character, which I think says bad things about me. Moving on. These books are wild. I like to call these my indulgent sports mafia books, because that's what they are, after all, books about the sports mafia. I don't like sports books. I'm also not, super crazy about mafia books. But something about this series just really hits different. I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. It's queer, there's a lot of sports, there's a lot of mafia, got some murder, we got Yakuza, we got a really, really short goalkeeper who stole my heart, even though he's really fucked up. I don't know. I can't even tell you why I love it so much. Oh, it's so good. It's not even that good. I don't know why either. Doesn't make any sense. My number 1 favorite book of the year is We Unleash the Merciless Storm by Taylor K. Mejia. So good. I Am Chaos Personified is one of my favorites. I want that as a tattoo or something. I just really like that. I am chaos personified, Carmen said, patting her poisoned knives with her free hand, feeling almost eager for the fight. So good. Another one of those books that just really hits so many of the things that I'm obsessed with. It's the sequel to a queer dystopian set in a Latina environment with some badass main characters. I love Carmen. I loved reading about her backstory and getting to know more about her. These books are phenomenal. These books being I Disappeared. Being these books. We Set the Dark on Fire is the first one. This was also on the list of top 10. So it's number 6 or something. This was my favorite book of the year until I read this one. I don't even know what to say. It's so good. If you like espionage, if you like dystopians, if you like really beautiful world building and a created, I don't even know how to explain it, this spirituality, it's got this interesting take on sexism and misogyny, and it's just so good. So yeah, there we have it, folks. Those are my favorite 10 books of the year. My foot is falling asleep. Realistically, my favorite 14 books of the year. But We Unleash the Merciless Storm reigns supreme. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's so good. I say that about all of these, except for maybe this one. There's a heady list of trigger warnings, and I really think only a certain kind of person would like these. I don't know why I'm one of those people. I'm a little bit too tired to psychoanalyze myself and try and figure that out. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I know I've disappeared. I'm back. I know I said that last time I disappeared. I mean it this time. I have a video coming out tomorrow. It's my 10 least favorite books of 2020. We also are going to have my 2020 stats wrap up, but I'm waiting to film that and do that until the end of the year has actually happened, because who knows, maybe I'll break my reading slump and read a book in the last 2 days of the month. Could happen, I guess. I'm so glad you hung out with me. I hope you enjoyed the ride. Please be sure to go down below, hit like, subscribe, leave me a comment, let me know what your favorite book of the year was. I'm glad to be back. Bye, I'll see you tomorrow. Mwah.